all I can do is try and be an asset to people I don't know and try and know them. And the only way I can do that is to try to know myself. Project that I'm working on right now comes in three parts. Oddly enough, I think I was thinking of stuff in terms of like a chapter book. Um, and like being a kid, I used to really get mad at the kids that carried around the big Harry Potter books because I couldn't read them. And I was like, I don't know. Why can you guys read so much and I can't? Uh, for whatever reason, that got stuck in my head. So I wanted to release music in chapters. So chapter one, chapter two, chapter three. And all of them would have a distinct character. Um, so I think it allows me to be different aspects of who I am, um, and personified even more on a very specific aspect. So the first one is Phoenix. And Phoenix is like a character that is very, very close to what I am already. Um, and I think it was just a little more pervasive. And then the next character's name is Nightmare, and Nightmare is very soft and sweet, and um, he's kind of the opposite of his name, uh, and he's very tender. And then there's another character that comes out that will essentially be maybe very mean or very magical, like a Bjork, um, maybe a little misunderstood. But while I'm working on all these projects, I feel like the through line from making or being a creative in itself is just allowing myself to use the world as a mirror and myself, um, to see the likeness of one another. And like, it's hard to explain because when you're in it, music, project making, creativity, I feel like it goes through you. It's not coming from you. So I'm never in the know that I'm doing the thing until the thing is done, and I'm like, oh, I did the thing. Um, so I don't know. I guess the creative process is like I start off with some kind of memory or an idea, and then for whatever reason, my body is just like, okay, autopilot, and then I come out on the other side. I'm like, whoa, I did the thing. Um, you know what? I feel like alter ego, kinda, but it's like they're all me, and they're like not different versions of me. They're just parts of me that are like hyper aestheticized. So Nightmare, for instance, is like, when I'm feeling a little softer and I want to whisper for the rest of the day, and I don't really have all the words that I want to say. And Phoenix is the opposite. Phoenix is like, I'm going to talk too much. I'm going to say too much. I'm going to be overtly vulnerable for no reason, because it makes me comfortable and it makes other people uncomfortable for me to be so vulnerable. And the last character is kind of like, you know, still trying to figure out who he is, and they're all just versions of me. So I don't know. Alter ego feels like I'm putting on a mask. I feel like these characters are taking them off. Some of the topics are like heavy, but I figured out that what I do, what my favorite thing to do is to make very hopeful music. Um, doesn't mean that it's overtly happy or overtly sad. It's just hopeful. And I never want to dictate how the music is supposed to make you feel. If you want to feel anything, I just want it to be a supplement to what you already feel. And hopefully it's a good supplement, because if you're feeling bad, I don't want you to feel worse. But I would like you to understand a little bit of more of what you're feeling. So I feel like my job, um, as a musician, isn't to give you anything that you're already not experiencing. It's just to make you take a second and be like, wow, the sky does look really nice right now. Instead of being like, I'm giving you the sky. I'm creating nothing. I'm just expressing something without permission either. It's like you don't need my permission to feel that, but I feel like I don't want to make you feel something that you don't feel already. I feel like that's not my job. I feel like my job is to allow you to understand that you're feeling this thing and not be afraid it. Like, don't suppress it. It's a beautiful question. One of the best I've ever heard. Uh, I think, growing up between borderlines and cultures and identity, it was hard because I think one of my biggest fears was to be misunderstood. And part of life is to be misunderstood because the way somebody else's perception of you will never be your actual perception. It'll never be you. So I've told people before, I'm like, your idea of me or your opinion of me lives and dies in your own head. But it took me a long time to realize that growing up because I'm like, okay, I live in Mexico and I'm black. Then I live in America and I'm Mexican. And it was hard for me to gather what identity should be. So I chose to adopt none of it. I chose to, this is by the time I'm like 17. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not a punk. I'm not a rocker. I'm not a rapper. I'm not black. I'm not Mexican. I'm nothing. And not in a bad way. So I kind of decided that I wanted to be liquid. Whatever cup I wanted to be poured into, I would turn into that cup. And not in a way of being a chameleon or a lack of identity. I think it was just being so open that I wasn't tied down to an idea of perception of myself. So I was always able to create without the bounds of what are people going to think about this, or how are people going to think that I'm this way or this way. And I'm like, the only limitations I put on myself is be kind, be empathetic, and then everything, be kind, be empathetic, don't hurt anybody, and don't let anybody hurt you. And that became my personality. That's all what identity means to me, is that I want to be a decent person until I die. But being of Mexican heritage, being of African American heritage are very important to me, because they serve us as a guide to how I want to experience the world rather than how the world experiences me. So my tongue tastes different food because my palate is Mexican. My ear listens to music differently because it's African American. And I was able to utilize those things to not necessarily create my personality, but to create a compass of safety for myself where I'm like, this feels like home. And home became quickly not what side of the state or the border I was on. Home became where I felt myself. And I learned that it just had to be wherever I'm at. So to answer your question in a very short way, being of, mixed ethnicity, it's one of the most important, valuable things that I'll ever have in my life. So much so that I can't qualify it or quantify the importance of me being a black and Mexican person making the music that I do, because I'm not held to any standard of what being black or Mexican means. I think it's, you know what? I speak Spanish. Es mi voz. It's my voice. I am black. It's my stature. It's my shoulders. It's my intelligence. All of those things combine into me being a person that I am. And I think rather than having an identity based around me being Mexican and liking soccer, or me being black and liking football, it's that me being Mexican makes me like guitar. Me being black makes me like drums. Neither of those matter. What matters is the music at that. I quickly learned that my identity being nothing meant that I could be everything. And that is what made me the musician I am today, without the bounds of, you need to do this because you're this, or you should do this because I don't live in the perception of anybody else, and I never will. And that's something that we're all going to have to accept. I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, what do you think you are today? Today, I'm a happy boy that wants to hang out with his dog and my best friend, and I want to smile. What's your identity? A happy boy. Instead of being like, I am this, I'm this, I'm this. No. The perception of me can be whatever it wants to be in another person's mind, because I'll never have to hear it. And even if they try and tell me, I'd be like, can you tell me what tortillas make you feel? Oh, they're good. Word. When I taste tortilla, I feel home. I taste love, because I can feel my grandmother's warmth hug me. Can you tell me what Zapp and Roger feels like when you listen to it. Oh yeah, it's good music. Well, I feel like being in my dad's Cutlass Supreme with bass in the back trunk and it's vibrating on my head and I'm a little kid. So to be black and to be Mexican is like to be anything, to be any other culture. It's to be love. And that's what those identities mean to me. And what builds on top of that is that I get to express it in music. So I will put out Spanish music, but I won't do it because I'm Mexican and I have to. I'll do it because it's important for a kid to look at themselves and be like, wow, I didn't know that it was okay to be myself without any pretense of what that means. Nah, I think we had who is it, Lil Rob and Baby Bash? I feel like that's the closest thing to being like, I'm Hispanic and I do this other thing. You know what? I less think that it's like I had influences of it. I mean, sure, like Los Prisioneros, they were making kind of Manchester sounds and they were from I think Chile. Obviously it's not Mexico, but it's Latin. Um, and they definitely influenced the way I look at percussion. My dad would listen to corridos and my mom would listen to Ice Cube and vice versa. So my influences growing up were always not even growing up, but just ingrained in me is that the boundary of what I could like was never, it was so blurry that it was like, yeah, my mom was like, here, listen to the Scorpions, listen to Van Halen. And then my dad on the other end is like, here, listen to Los Tigres, listen to, and it's crazy because my dad's the black one and my mom's the Mexican one. But they were sharing information so quick that my brain took probably 18, 19 years to realize like, whoa, I got a master class in accepting of culture. And that allowed me to make music where the identity that's attached to that music doesn't mean anything to me. Because I've never had to belong in like, oh, these are the punks, and then these are the rappers, and these are the people that like pop music, and here's the country people. It is all the same to me. You know what? First and foremost, I'm always like thankful because it's not, none of it's a given. I have the best job in the world, right? In my eyes, where I get to go and on stage and express myself and hope that it services something for another person, or else it's just me exploiting time that I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this thing and I'm so cool. It's like, nah. I'm very, very thankful that the world has allowed me the opportunity to feel so connected, right? I spent a lot of my childhood very lonely. Um, I had older siblings that went to school and my mom worked multiple jobs, so I was alone probably 98% of the time. And it took a large effect on me. And now the whole world can be my friend. Now the loneliness doesn't feel what it felt like. Now it feels like I can go up on a stage and be like, oh, I always feel weird being on a stage. It's weird. It's not because I'm uncomfortable. I'm very comfortable on a stage, but I feel like it's the opposite. It should be like a cathedral where I'm on the floor level and they're up around me because I feel like I'm so accepted, and even if they don't understand. So like going on tour with the legendary Interpol is like, first of all, them thinking of me like, oh, this makes sense, kinda. For me, that's like the ultimate sign of love, where they're like, we love music, and whatever the perspective of what we should do or shouldn't do, it literally just comes down to the music. So I'm very grateful, among anything else, that there's people that find what I have to say the most marginal, minuscule, meaningful. If I'm fraction of 1% of something that can make you feel something because I have something to say, then I can leave this earth and be like, you know what? I try to do my service, and my service was here to be not a Pied Piper, not to have anybody follow me, not to have anybody think of me highly, was just for me to be a friend when somebody needs it. And that's, I feel like the stage allows me to do that to a lot of people at once. I feel like, excuse me, so people that have aspirations of fame, stardom, uh, renownedness, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think that is a defense mechanism for something that you've experienced in your life. Sometimes I think neglect breeds the desire for something that seems spectacular, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's just how some people digest their life. Um, I think it's that thing, like when you love yourself, you realize like how strong that actually, how powerful what that feels like, right? I think when people ask me, even back home, they're like, how does it feel to be famous? And I'm like, what is that? What does that, I understand my job is great. I have people that support me. I have so many people that support me, and I'm so fortunate. And I'm like, oh, I'm either the luckiest kid on earth or I'm chosen. And not chosen in a way that's like, I have something special. I'm chosen like, oh, this is the life I get to live. This is really tight, right? I think one of the most telling things about why I do what I do and what I want to achieve, like I said before, I spent so much time being by myself, and there's so many people that want to spend their life. Here's the thing. I'll answer the question in a circle, right? It's hard because my brain works double time. I have spent so much time by myself that I've learned some people's idea of an identity, which I guess is a reoccurring theme, is like, I am this and nobody else is this. I want to spend my life doing the opposite. I want to be so connected to when I tell somebody I feel you, I'm not lying. I want to be like, no, I feel you. I want to have true empathy before I die. And I have an inkling of it, like a sprinkles amount of I can feel you. But when I say I can feel you, if you're feeling torn, I want to cry with you. I don't want to just be like, oh, I understand. It's like, no, no, no. I'm right here with you. So my job requires me to be very transparent to the world that I'm in and the world that acknowledges me. The more people you know, the more you can affect. Sure. But if the idea is to be famous for the sake of being famous, you are going to die lonely. And there's nothing wrong with dying lonely. It's just sad. I don't care about being famous. I don't care about if I walk and I go into a Target and nobody knows who I am. That doesn't mean I'm nobody. That just means that I'm very specific to the people that I'm around and very specific to the people that I actually affect. I think we compare ourselves for this like a false idea that fame or money, any of that solves any of the most realistic problems that we have as humans. And most of those are communication, empathy. And if you learn how to valiantly communicate with people, you can probably spend the rest of your life knowing that you're so connected to everything that you don't have to talk to anybody. So I think what not paying attention to being known or famous has allowed me to do is understand that whether it's one or 1,000, it's all the same metric. It's all the same thing. If I'm making music and only one person listens to me, that equates to the same as the entire planet to me. Because somebody out there that I don't see get up in the morning, put their pants on, put their socks on, put their shoes on, they're living an equal existence to mine. So mine is no more important than any other person. All I can do is try and be an asset to people I don't know and try and know them. And the only way I can do that is to try to know myself. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned about myself and why I make music and how I make music is that since I spent a lot of time being super cerebral and like introspective of my own self and too wide-eyed to understand that I'm just like a kid that's very curious, is that music allowed me to practice a sort of medication on myself. It allowed me to speak things out loud that I wouldn't say otherwise. In a form of therapy, it's like a talk therapy, but with yourself. I think it's super, 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 super more important than anything else that I can stand for, that we we take the time to acknowledge the things that are going on in our lives and treat them with the same amount of care and compassion that you would your mother, your father, your best friend, your boyfriend, girlfriend, person. We are, for whatever reason, exclusively mean to ourselves. I mean, some people are just generally mean and f those people, but most of the time, the meanest person you are is to yourself. And why? So instead of that, why don't you just include yourself in like, yo, I'm so nice to everybody. I should be nice to myself. And in that, I should pay attention that if I'm feeling a certain way, I should talk about it. I should seek help. And I should feel no way about being a person that needs an extra hand at life. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, you motherfuckers are just as fucked up as me. The only difference is I'm not afraid to talk about it. Because if I talk about it and I make it a thing that people can wrap their head around on a general level, they'd be like, oh, I feel like that too. I had a neuropsychology class in college, and I swear I had every single thing that they diagnosed. And I was like, that's wrong. You should never self-diagnose, by the way. Go see a psychiatrist and a, psychologist. But I was like, oh, I feel like that all the time. And then I talked to my roommate. I'm like, do you ever feel like this? And they're like, oh, all the time. I'm like, yeah, we're all fucked up. Which means none of us are fucked up. It just means that we need to learn how to take care of one another just as much as we need to take care of ourselves. And music has allowed me to vocalize that without actually just being like, hey, that car is red. Instead of saying, hey, that car is red, I say that's an apple car. That car is a manzanita. Instead of it being like, you need to take this medicine, I say, what you're about to put in your mouth is going to taste good. So the sweet, the good, the bad, the ugly, it's all valuable. I just am not afraid to tell people what I know about myself because I'm not afraid of myself.
Oh, that was so great. Thank you. And is there any